Are we good? It's a pleasure doing chatsness with you. Um, so, hi, my name is Dylan Davis, also known as Cathartigan on Twitter. I am the designer of this card game. There's another video on our YouTube channel, which is just called Mythion Card Game on YouTube, in which I teach everyone how to play the game using the tabletop simulator version of the game. And it occurred to me while we were getting ready to launch the game on Make Playing Cards, and on our website, that I might need to make some videos to explain how some of this works. Like, it never really occurred to me that people might not know how to, cut cards out of sheets and sleeve them. But there's a lot of people who are not, trading card game fanatics like me who proxy decks to test and that kind of thing. So, it was just kind of an interesting thought experiment where I was like, oh yeah, people might not actually know what I mean by card sleeve, right? Because if you go to our website, mythioncardgame.com, you'll find that you can download 2 free decks, right? You can download 2 free decks from our website. There's no commitment, nothing. You put in your email. I don't even think it signs you up for the newsletter or anything like that. And it just shoots you an email with a one-time download PDF of all of the of this right here, of these sheets of cards. And then I thought, well, my dad, who's like my business partner in this, he wrote the novel, I made the game. We were discussing about what to do, and he was like, well, I mean, maybe you should tell people how to do this. And I was like, really? But yeah, so anyway, if you're watching this on YouTube, you've probably skipped this section. The thing that I want to make note of, though, is that in order to make, in order to cut cards out of sheets, it's pretty simple, right? So you have your sleeve, just like a plastic card sleeve. You can find them on Amazon. Any of them will work as long as it says standard size. Don't get Japanese size. And a card, right? And I have tons and tons of Magic bulk, but Magic cards are the same size as poker cards for the most part. So you can just grab a couple of decks of poker cards if you want. Or there's a link on our website to some blank cards. And the only reason why you want these is just because they add a little bit of stiffness, right? So if you have this in here, there's a little bit of stiffness to the card. Whereas, so here's one that I've already cut out. This is one of my cards, and it's sleeved over top. Oh, that's a Flesh and Blood card. But let's take that Flesh and Blood card out of the sleeve, and then put this over, and just put the piece of paper inside the sleeve, right? This is all bendy and doesn't feel nice, right? It doesn't feel nice it wouldn't feel nice to have a stack of these in your hand to shuffle because it's just this bendy little nonsense thing. They also don't feel nice to grab, There's a reason why we play poker with cardstock and not, I don't know, what have you, sheets of paper. So what you do instead is you put the card in the sleeve, add that thickness, add that stiffness, that rigidity, and then you sleeve that over top, right? And this is great because it allows you to try any number of games. And for our game specifically, we're very indie, right? It's just me, the designer, developer, everything. I did everything, and then friends and family for testing, and that was it. So we felt that it was only fair, given how how low budget and indie we are, that we make it available for. Let me tilt this up just a little bit. We make it available for people to try because, you know, I don't claim to be Mark Rosewater. I don't claim to be James White. I don't claim to be a brilliant game designer. This was an amazing learning experience. I learned a lot. Sorry, it's 8 a.m. here. Making it, and I think that it's a fun game. The game goes, you know, it works, and I personally think it's a lot of fun. But you gotta allow people to try for free, and this was our solution to that. So let's cut some cards out. So, to cut cards out, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to film this. I might need to make the camera a teeny bit taller. Maybe I could do something like that. Good? Okay. So I'm actually going to move some of these sheets away. So I live in Germany. So I went to my local, it's called DM, which is kind of like Walgreens in America. It's kind of like a Walgreens. But you could go to Staples, you could go to Office Depot, whoever else prints. I'm not entirely sure. And print these out that way. I personally think it's the best. Yeah, I think you get the highest quality, and you don't have to use your precious home printer ink for, you know, nobody wants to run out of like ink when they're trying to print actually really important documents. So I like to just, you know, when I can, if I want to go print some proxies, because that's essentially what these are, quote unquote proxies, right? But I like to just go to my local store and pay $5 and have them print really high quality images on sheets. And this is what you get. When you sign up on the website, you put in your email, it sends you a PDF of this. And it's just card after card after card. Two rows of 4 cards, 8 cards per sheet. And I think it's 18 pages, which is a pretty significant chunk. But then once you have a card sheet, you need scissors. And I just have these. I mean, I don't have like special cutty outy scissors. And you need some sleeves and cards on Amazon. And then simply just, there are these little handy cut lines. I don't know if that can be seen on the camera, but there's these little handy cut lines that indicate where the edge of the card is. And that's what you're shooting for. You follow the cut edge and do as best you can to get as close as physically possible to the edge, right? So you'll see it a little bit better when it's actually cut out, and it's interesting because when I was actually writing the rules, or not the rules, but when I was writing, I wrote a little guide on the website. See, I screwed that one up a little bit. I wrote a little guide for how to cut cards out of sheets. I'm going to put a little angle cut right there to give myself a little breathing room. And you can cut it up in a number of ways, right? Like you can cut the horizontal first, you could cut in strips. You can cut in strips. But anyway, so it occurred to me, like, I was writing this little written guide, and I was like, you know what? I bet I could just find a YouTube video and link it and be like, you know, give some of the YouTube people some love out there. And so then I Googled how to do this method, right? Go to your local Staples, Walgreens, office supply store, whatever, pharmacy, print them out, and there isn't anything. I can't find it. This is apparently the only video. This will go on YouTube after this. This is apparently the only video that that exists on how to do the like really easy version of proxy cutting. And then you just cut this last little dude off. And it also occurred to me as well. Well, I'll talk about that in a sec. So this is the cutout card, right? And I did a pretty okay job. I don't know if that can be seen, but there's a little focus. Yeah, it's not really focusing. Whoa, man, flipping my hands upside down. There's a little white strip right here that you can kind of see if I hover it over the black, and that's me cutting incorrectly. That's gonna happen. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to get it perfect. You can get it close with relative ease, but you can fix that if you just kind of lightly shave along the side there. Now that white is gone. But you got to be careful because you can screw it up. Like if you try and go back over, sometimes I just don't even do it, because if you go back over, sometimes the scissors will actually fold the paper itself, and then it actually makes the problem worse when you're trying to cut so finely. And sometimes you cut out like these little divots, and there's just not really much you can do about it, which is fine. So then after that, it just so happens I have a lot of extra magic cards that I don't use, so they became my stiffness proxy cards, right? And just slip that in, slip it over the art, and look, new card. Black back, so you can't tell, what the card is because it's inside a sleeve, and there's just a magic card underneath, and you would never know, right? In person, it looks pretty good. I'm actually quite impressed with the way all of these PDFs came out. It's always a risk. I'm pretty familiar with this. I do this a lot. If anybody's familiar with the card game Netrunner, which is now run by a nonprofit outfit called Null Signal Games, they're the ones who taught me how to do all of this, right? Because they put out new sets for their card game every couple months or so, and they put all their PDFs available as well, and you go and you download their PDF and you print it, and they do a really interesting thing. I like how they do it. So you can, from what I understand, it's been a while since I've gone and grabbed any of their sets, but from what I understand, you can get all of their sets for free, and you can print them out, and they send you, when you get them for free, they send you a slightly lower resolution PDF of their cards, and then you can pay for a higher resolution, or you can pay to have the cards printed on actual cardstock, right? And I think that's a pretty good solution, because they, it is a nonprofit organization, but they do need to make some money. Is this an original card game you're making? Yeah. It's actually done. It's available. You can go to mythioncardgame.com and get this PDF for free. The first set's done. And the starter decks are free, and it comes with 2 starter decks, a rules document, and a world tree deck. And we'll cover the world tree deck eventually, but I do cover it in a learn to play video on the YouTube channel, which is just Mythion Card Game on YouTube. I'm just cutting out the starter deck, So then we can get back to cutting. So the way that the game works, of course, is that you have your identity cards, right? So this is Gavin and AI Nima, and they're 2 big characters in the novel. And then you have Galzu and AI Nima again, with a different subtitle. And the way that the game works is that when you play with an identity, you're playing with both this one and this one. And you need to satisfy some things on this version in order for him to become this version, because this version is how you attain the most victory points, right? But yeah, I think it's a very interesting game. I think there's actually not a lot of games like it. I'm just gonna cut this in half so it's a little less unwieldy. But yeah, the game went live a couple of days ago. Hopefully that is not blowing the microphone out. It just occurred to me that that might be absolutely annihilating the microphone. All right, that's a little less. Cut that little guy off. And you can buy it. You can buy the set. So the set comes, you can either get the, can you link the site? Yeah, 1 second. I'm going to do it with my phone because my keyboard is kind of unavailable to be occupied. Okay, so we're going to go to the stream, and we're going to pause. And then we're going to go to the website. MythionCardGame.com. Yeah, I should probably just figure out how to make that very easily clickable and findable. Correct? All right. In the chat. And yeah, you can just go to rules and downloads, or you can, I think you can scroll to just to the bottom of just about any page. And then put in your email, and they send you a PDF. But yeah, so the starter decks, 2 free decks, 1 World Tree deck. If you go to makeplayingcards.com and place an order, you're welcome. You are very welcome, Nunez. You can buy the set, which is these 2 starter decks, the same World Tree deck, plus 2 more heroes. And they're printed on actual cardstock, right? With card backs and, you know, a little more professionally done than just proxying and cutting. But I think the proxying and cutting is just fine to learn. That's, you know, that's why I pushed pretty hard for this to be available right when we got going. Because you don't want to be the expensive people, you know, like if you're new and you're not new. I mean, I've been doing a lot of game design work for a really long time, but like if you're trying to get out a new product, you need to be, the cheaper the better, right? Like if you can be free, which is what this is, you're cool. And being cool is a lot better than being uncool, right? So the way I see it. Especially if you're not backed by a big IP, right? Is all the art AI? Yeah, it is done. It's all done by AI. I did it all through Midjourney. And that's probably going to cause some reservations, and I understand. If that bothers people, that's fine. I don't mind. Meaning, I don't mind that it bothers you, right? I didn't do any of the nasty stuff that you can do with Midjourney. I just prompted it. But I can tell you right now, first, I can't draw. Second, if I needed to pay artists, this wouldn't just never have come out. Like, those are the 2 options. It's either do it through Midjourney or don't do it. You know what I mean? So while I understand and can even somewhat empathize with the with people's kind of reservations about AI created art, I mean, I worked really hard to generate and get Midjourney to do what I wanted it to do. And so while, yes, I didn't do visual art, I did text prompting. I did feel like it was the correct move for the game. Number 1 being because the game literally wouldn't exist if I didn't do it. And number 2, the game is based on a novel that my father wrote. And when we originally set out to make the game, I had thought, when we originally set out to make the game, I had wondered, how are we going to do it? And Midjourney came to mind because I personally dabble in Midjourney art. I like to make it. It's fun. I don't do the steal people's stuff. Like I don't go grab pictures off the internet and feed it into Midjourney and tell Midjourney to. First of all, Midjourney bans you for life if you do that, if they find out. And second, just it's a bad thing to do, right? So I don't do it. And as we were talking, I edited my dad's novel for him, and it's all about artificial intelligence. I mean, the novel is effectively about this guy, Gavin, falling in love with an artificial intelligence who lives in a virtual reality. And so the novel itself is completely entrenched in AI thinking. Everything about it is about AI thinking and AI love and AI art and AI, everything. So to me, it actually kind of fit that we had one singular artist and it was Midjourney. So it's kind of interesting in that regard that, like, if you can couch the work you're doing thematically in artificial intelligence, does that, I suppose, excuse something that I don't think needs to be the case? I don't think you need to excuse yourself for using AI art unless you're stealing other people's stuff. Then yeah, you should probably excuse and also stop. But yeah, Nuchez says, yeah, it's a tough position because I'm generally against AI art. I also get that it's impossible to make without it. Yeah, right. Like, I get it. I understand that people have reservations about AI art. But it's enabled me to do things that I would literally never be able to do. Like this. Like, okay, yeah, sure. I could go work as a paralegal, save up money for 6 years to get together enough capital that I can then, email 65 artists to make art for my indie game that may or may not sell. And that's it, and I'll see you in 2029. Or I can use Midjourney. And if the game is... Wait, I'm literally a paralegal? That's so funny. That's so funny. I don't know why I said paralegal. I think I said paralegal because that's probably the job that I could just go do now, like in terms of like my educational background. I could either go get a job as a paralegal or I could go get a job as a teacher. And design on weekends and in between meals and sacrifice times with friends and family so that I can save up enough money so that I can go to an artist, so that I can pay artists. Like I'm a writer by trade, and like that's what I do. I write, and like I don't know. I have a strange thing with this AI community or this AI art, people being so against it. Like, I get certain cases. I understand people saying, don't steal my stuff and put it into Midjourney. Totally fair. What I don't understand is people saying that AI art isn't real art. That just is weird to me, because a lot of people who say this stuff, the kind of stuff, are like filmmakers. And it's like, who was accused of not being a real artist? A filmmaker. Back when films were first coming out. Who was accused of not being an artist when it first came out? Game makers. Who was accused of not being an artist when it first came out? A novel writer. Novel writers weren't real artists when novels were coming around in the 1800s. Novels were considered dumb little things for, like, I'm serious when I say this, and this is going to sound sexist, but this is true. When novels were first being published, they were considered lower quality stories written for hysteric women at the time, right? That whole concept of the hysteric woman, which is obviously sexist and false, but like that was the concept, was that it was like, well, there's a bunch of bored housewives, they have nothing to do, so we'll write these novels for them. And all the people pushed their glasses up and said, novels, and now that's considered the highest form of written art in existence. And then film comes along, And everybody says, well, if you want a real story, you have to read a novel. And then they forget 20 years later, and then TV series come out, and all the filmmakers are like, well, if you want a real story, you need to watch a movie. And then games start getting stories, and they're like, well, if you want a real story, you need to watch TV series, movies, or novel. And then, and now I just think it's the same shit with AI. Like, it's going to be the case that eventually people are going to get used to it. It's not going to be so scary. And you'll be able to look at it and go, that's Midjourney art. I like that, or I don't like that, So I don't know. To say stop, you don't get to, is a very strange thing to me. That's the thing I have trouble with. I think Nunez says, I got to go back. I think the biggest reasons most people, including me, are against are, one, they steal AI art to use; two, people and companies that can afford real artists using; three, the trend of taking humanity away from art. Like those really shitty AI generated profile pictures that people pay for. Like, you could have just gotten a real artist to make that. Absolutely. And I think that's just lazy stuff, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I agree with this, that, like, if you're paying Midjourney, because Midjourney is like $30 a month or something like that. Luckily, I don't have to pay for Midjourney because I'm part of I used to work for a university that I have access to Midjourney through that. So it's like actually literally free for me. And that's great because I needed to generate something like, 120 pieces of art or something like that. And 120 final drafts of art. I probably generated somewhere in the vein of over 1,000 pieces of art while making the game. But to me, it's like AI makes it so easy to make art that it's inevitable that people will use it lazily, right? And it's the same thing with film. Like, if you go, when a camcorder first came out, people weren't like, look at that, wow, everybody's Kubrick now. You know what I mean? Like, that just wasn't the case. If people were like, look at all these horrible films, it's such a bummer that people are able to make this lowbrow bullshit with camcorders at home. Right. And then people got actually really good. And the birth of the mockumentary comes from the idea of a camcorder, because it lends itself very well to making it would make sense in the medium of film that a lower quality camera would be used to make like some kind of strange found footage, documentary. And so it all comes from creativity and laziness, right? How creative are you? How lazy are you? Because if you're not lazy and you're very creative, you're going to figure out a way to use a medium in a way that's beneficial and interesting, right? If you're lazy and shitty, then you're going to steal other people's art, make your Dungeons and Dragons character with it, and use it as your Twitter profile picture. And so, like, I don't know. It's a very interesting dynamic of like medium art, and that sort of thing. It is really cool watching movies from the early 2000s where it let people with great ideas but no funding tell great stories. Exactly, right? Now, it could be the case, who knows, in a year and a half, there could be some regulations against AI art. Some very strict ones. Copyright, strict copyright law. And so, while I understand why people are so against the usage of AI art, I went ahead and pushed the game out anyway because I do think that I have solid reasoning for why it was okay that I did it. If people disagree with that, that's fine. But I do think that there is merit to democratizing and making tools available, even if, this card doesn't look like a Magic card. We can be honest with ourselves, right? This does not look even close to a Magic card. And because I use Midjourney to generate all the backgrounds of the different card types, right? So this is Jealousy. This is a negative ideation card. And if you look closely at it, you'll see that it has a background, right? This border, Flesh and Blood card. And then if you look at something like, doesn't matter, this one. This has an obviously different border, different background, right? It's a different type of card. And so what I had Midjourney do is I prompted it to generate multiple different types of graphic design. Why? Because there's absolutely no way I can do it myself. Two, I can't pay a graphic designer. I just don't have the money. Three, I actually thought it was interesting to lean into the concept that this is almost an entirely AI made game. Like, it's not that I picked and chose, right? Like, oh, I value graphic design more than I value real art, right? Or I value paying for graphic design because it's cheaper. No, no, no. Midjourney did all of it. Not only that, but OpenAI generated some of the rules for the game, right? So I went to whatever the Dolly website is. I went to their text AI, and I had it generate certain rules based on my prompting. So not only is the art all generated by Midjourney and AI, but the game actually, in some ways, is in collaboration with AI, right? So I went like really hard into this, into this AI thing, but it's also because of this character in the book, because she is an AI, and she is a central character in the novel, and basically starts the entire concept of the novel and the world of the novel, right? So it's hard to see AI art doing anything that an artist can't or that someone couldn't learn to do. Sure, yeah, of course. But that's not the point. I don't think that what this is being looked at right now is a visual medium. That this is visual art, right? And I don't look at it that way. I look at it as AI is a new type of camcorder. That's how I look at AI. That it's a recording camera. It's the new version. Or a video game. Right? A video game was originally seen as a medium in which you did something that you'd never done before to consume story, right? There was a ludic element to the narrative consumption in that you needed to do something in order to make the story happen. Whereas in film and TV, you don't do anything. You're a passive observer of narrative. Books as well. You're a passive observer. You don't do anything to make the narrative happen. It just happens. And then games come along and they introduce the entire concept of ludology, ludic narrative. And so while I think that it is the case that that the output is art in this particular circumstance, I think that AI is largely misunderstood in what it actually is, in that it is just a new medium. That's all it is. There will be visual artists, and there will be AI artists. It looks similar, but so does film and television, right? And they're different mediums. So is a book and a film. They're different mediums, but they look very similar, and they operate very similarly. Film, passive narrative consumption. Book, passive narrative consumption. Right? Film simplifies, quote unquote, the process of the passive narrative consumption in that you don't need to use your hands in order to consume it. Right? But it is passive narrative consumption. Different medium, kind of the same output. And so, kind of my treatise on this is that while the AI artist, the output is similar, it looks like a picture, it comes from a different medium. And once people are good enough to recognize that this is Midjourney, which like now I can't even, most people who are spending reasonable amounts of time on the internet go Midjourney, 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 Dolly, 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 real, Midjourney, Midjourney, Midjourney. I think that will just become an accepted norm. Because AI art is not going away. Like, it's just not. It's not going to go away. It's just a matter of how do we adopt it into the, to the zeitgeist. Nuchez says, I think it's the trend of it replacing real artists because it's cheaper and capitalism. Yeah, well, that's a problem with capitalism. That's not a problem with AI art. And removing the soul of art, et cetera, but I get exactly what you're saying. Yeah, I just kind of disagree with the soul of the art thing. Like, I understand why people make that, because it's like, I think it's a strange argument because a lot of those people are atheists, and I am too. But they say things like the soul of the art is gone. It's like, what are you talking about? You don't believe in a soul. It's a confusing argument to me, because like if you look at this picture, it's kind of hard to see in this particular light, but looking at the picture on the card, there is emotion in that, and if you want to read into the emotion, you can, right? I mean, there is as much emotion in this piece as there is in this piece. So this one has soul, this one doesn't have soul, right? According to this argument. And I don't understand why that is the case. Because like, yes, an AI made it, but I was the one who chose it. And I wouldn't have chosen it if it didn't evoke some kind of emotion. I didn't choose this one because it's cool. I chose it because it made me feel something. And so did I imbue it with soul when I chose it? When is conception of soul of a piece of art? You know, when is conception? When is birth? By soul, I think they mean what about the artist led to them to create? What about me prompting the AI to make it? Like, is that just not valuable? Is that not the same? Because I had a particular emotion. A lot of my Midjourney prompts are actually emotion based, right? So for example, jealousy is an emotional prompt. And all of the prompt came from my descriptions of jealousy. And then I said, make jealousy into a humanoid form, right? So I described what jealousy feels like. And then I said, make that a human. And that's what it did. I will say that's the best and most expressive AI art I've ever seen. Personally, it's usually so bad and empty. I agree, because people don't know how to prompt AI. And I spent months learning how to do it, right? And what I found often was that the best way to prompt AI for results that you wanted was to actually write it like you were writing a story. Because I'm a fiction writer, right? So the thing that I understand about fiction writing is that emotion is the name of the game. If you can do emotion, you can do anything. And so all I cared about was generating emotion. So I would write emotions, and I would write, like this, for example. This is kind of like an equipment in Flesh and Blood. This card, Gavin's sketchbook, was all about the concept of note keeping and the feeling of having a journal, right? And the feeling of having a sketchbook that you return to for ideas and inspiration. So it was like inspirational sketchbook filled with drawings of half-finished designs and blah, 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 notes along the side and flourishes of color. And, and that's how I was writing to Midjourney and saying, do that, right? And yes, I could pay an artist to do that, but I have no money. Let's see, I will say that's I already read that one. Like if it all looked like that and had the amount of effort you put in and people had the reasoning you do behind it, people would be more on board. I agree, totally. I completely agree. Yes. And so, while I don't think it maybe sounds like I'm very anti like visual artists, and I don't mean to say that. I think that their work is very important, and I love visual art, of course, right? So I do think that there's onus on both sides, right? There's onus on both sides to justify their argumentation, because AI artists, they're just not artists. That's what I'm saying. That's ultimately what I'm saying, is like, you're not mad at the concept of AI art. You're mad at bad artists. You know what I mean? Like, you're not you specifically. I'm saying you, kind of the royal version of the term. That people are angry because AI has made it easy for shitty artists who aren't actually artists to just type in some random garbage and put it out, right? But if you're an actual artist, and this is how it always has been, This is how it always has been, though. Okay? So back in the day, when film was first coming out, film was originally an engineering experiment, right? If you look at the early films, they are tech demos, like what we have for VR, right? Or what all of these AI image generators are. They're all tech demos, right? Look at this tech. Look at this new piece of technology. The world it could unlock. And they said the same shit in the early 1900s. Look at this new piece of tech. You can make pictures that move, right? Oh my gosh, pictures that move. And everybody looking at it was like, that's not real art, right? And then artists came in and they made it real art, because that's how it works. The technology eventually becomes a medium in which artists figure out how to make it with emotion. And it's the same with video games. Video games were a tech demo. It was like, look, not only can we make pictures move, but you can influence the pictures with your thumbs. Oh my gosh, right? Incredible. And then they were like, yeah, great. There's no soul, there's no emotion, there's nothing. It's not even a narrative. It's images that move and there's nothing in them, right? They rot your brain. That's what was said. That was what was said about video games. They rot your brain. I'm pretty sure that was said about TV as well, and movies. They rot your brain, right? And then artists got in there and they figured out how to do it, and they figured out how to imbue it with emotion. And this is the cycle that we always go through, day after day, or medium after medium, decade after decade, is old guard going, you can't do this, there's no emotion. New guard figuring out how to get it with emotion. Old guard going, wow, that's really good. Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. I've never actually seen high effort AI art like this. It's cool having perception changed about it. I'm glad that I at least tried. I don't mean to like make anyone feel bad or anything about like it. I just think that, yeah, it's just interesting. It's an interesting discussion. I taught a class on this at a university in Germany, at the University of the International Film School in Germany. I taught a whole like series of lectures on AI art and what it means and the implications. And let me tell you, there's that classroom full of film students who are just about to graduate and go into their jobs, finding out about AI. That was a tough crowd. That was a tough crowd. You're a very smart dude. What did you study in school? Well, I studied English and creative writing as my major and bachelor's, and then philosophy as my minor. And then I went and did my master's of fine arts degree in creative writing in fiction writing at Southern Illinois. But my master of fine arts degree was actually a degree in a lot of this stuff, because that was what Pinckney Benedict is the professor there. And he and I came to an agreement pretty early on that, like, if you're trying to do print fiction, you're shooting yourself in the foot for nothing, like for fun, if you're just trying to do print fiction. So the idea for he and I had was, we need to change the curriculum, and we need to figure out how to make writers, who are the most Luddite, annoying people on earth, to open their minds to the idea of telling stories in different mediums, right? I just came to fall asleep to someone playing Marvel Snap. Was not expecting to broaden my horizons and shit. Sorry. I don't mean to keep you up. If you need to go to bed, that's totally fine. I still need to cut out cards. I keep getting so distracted by my passion, which is talking and being obnoxious about my opinions. Yeah, I was literally going to ask if you had an MFA. You talk like someone that does. In a good way, in parentheses. Yeah. I have an MFA in creative writing. Are you studying right now, or are you graduated? No, it's all good. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm glad. I should probably put the chat on the screen for the next stream. Yeah, so let's see. this is a hero, or an identity, I guess you could say. And this is an object of power, which is like an equipment card. I graduated 2015. I went to film school for film, but ended up graduating for econ. Ah, cool. Very cool. So you took the responsible route and graduated in econ. That's good. Because, yeah, I mean, I have a master's degree, and the most I have to show for it is this card game, basically. And some teaching gigs. All right, so... yeah, what did I want to... there was something I wanted to explain about this. But in order to do that, I need to cut this card out. No, wait, I graduated 2019, not 2015. Yeah, I was going to say, I graduated from my bachelor's in 2015. So... I mean, it is pretty late for you. I'm assuming, considering you're about to go to bed. Meanwhile, it's 9 a.m. where I am. Oh, just realized that's not in frame. All right. So, now that... ooh, I cut that one out bad. Now that... now that I have these two cut out, sort of the concept of game here is that, so this is your opening identity, right? And this has an ego win condition, which is to play 2 a lesson learned cards. And then it has some character effects in this paragraph here. And then it has down here, this is all in the learn to play video. It's kind of hard to see that text in the camera. You can read it though, in person. But it says encumbrance, and encumbrance is 5 negative ideation cards, and negative ideations are these, right? So the goal of the game is to satisfy your ego win condition, meanwhile trying to cut these out of your deck, and there's specific ways you do it, mostly paying for them. But once you have 5 cut out of your deck, 5 negative ideation cards, the identity flips. So how I conceived of this was that this would actually be a double-sided card, right? That you would glue these together, and then when you finished it, you would flip it over, and it gives you a new... and this piece of art took absolutely ages to do, by the way. And then you get a new new win condition that gives you 3 victory points. So this one gives you 1 victory point, this one gives you 3. And there's a specific way you do it, and but that was the kind of the concept. Let's see. No way to graduate. Oh, I already read that. I was looking at that message and was like, wait, did I really graduate 8 years ago? So do you like interact with your opponent and fight them, or is it just who can get their win condition faster? So basically how it works is there are some light interaction cards, but for the most part, it's actually kind of a cooperative game. And that's by design, because these are a nightmare. Like, these are really hard. And so the concept of the game is that it is sort of who combos off faster wins, but there's not really you don't really win in this game like you do in other games. So for example, this is paranoia, right? This is a negative ideation, and that has 2 turns to be paid for, or else both players lose. Right, and both players have a number of these in their deck, 8 to be exact. Every single opening deck, every single set 1 deck has 8 of these. And if any of them fire, both players lose. So the goal then becomes you have to help your opponent to excise these from their deck, and also try and get the most points possible. So you're doing a little bit of a dance with disruption plus helping. And then there's also what's called the threshold. And the threshold is a minimum number of victory points that need to be achieved in order for both players to consider the game a victory, right? So the threshold is 7. So let's say both players ignore each other, don't do anything. They don't do their ego win condition, and they just cut these out of their deck, flip their identity over, and do their ego death win condition that's worth 3 points, right? Once they do that, the game is going to be a loss because they missed the threshold. Because their total amount of points that they can gain is 6. And they need together 7. And there's 8 possible points total in a game of Mythion. So do you... Oh, I already read that. So the game is a little bit restrictive in the way that you can go about winning. Because you can't just ignore your opponent. And you can't just disrupt them. You have to help them. But you also need to take care as to how much you help them, right? Because you don't want to help them too much, but you don't want to help them too little either. But AI Nima is a very interactive deck. She's probably the most interactive character in the first set. Whereas like Gavin is a little bit more generous. Gavin tends to help his opponents more. Opponent. It's not really an opponent because it's not really like a competitive card game. It's a collaborative card game. The way that I conceived of it was like a narrative card game where it's a narrative card game between two players who have very interesting conditions and they need to help each other, but not too much because there is a way to kind of win. Because if you have 4 points and your opponent has 3, then you win. But if you don't help your opponent and they lose, you lose too. Let's see. So we put that there, and then we take this, and we put AI Nemo Learner over top. And there's something else I need to do too, and this is something I actually genuinely forgot about, which was that I need to put the deck lists on the website. Because these are pre-constructed decks, right? I'm going to introduce some deck building stuff a little bit later, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do the 4 heroes, the World Tree deck, and introduce deck building. So I'm going to put out a new pack sometime in the next couple months, and that will introduce some light deck building changes to allow players to kind of do more than one thing with any given deck, or maybe more than 2. Yeah, I was going to say it seems more like a story than a game. Like as a competitive player, when I see both players lose the game, I see force a draw if you were going to lose anyway. Sure, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I tend to play my favorite games are competitive games as well. But again, all of this comes to the concept of all of this comes from the concept of the novel, right? The novel is very conflict light, let's say. So I was hired. My dad approached me and he said, "Do you have any ideas? Do you want to make anything for my novel? I'll pay you to do it." And I said, yes. And so after having read the novel and edited it, I was like, okay, I've got some ideas. The novel, it doesn't really have conflict. So how am I going to figure out how to imbue conflict into a game that draws from source material that doesn't have conflict, right? And so Magic the Gathering, for example, has shitloads of conflict. There's interdimensional beings that are constantly trying to destroy the universe, and every single plane in Magic is under assault. Same thing with like Flesh and Blood, Marvel Snap. Those games they thrive on conflict. That's the entire concept of the game. Whereas in my dad's novel, it's actually really muted conflict. It's very like personal, and the idea of becoming a better person, and it's a very like not literary versus genre fiction, but literary in the sense that there's not a big bad, right? And so I was like, how the hell am I going to turn that into a game mechanic? Especially one that is between 2 players, because I don't want it to be a solitaire game. That's not fun. I wanted it to be something more interesting. I mean, I guess you could play this game as a solitaire game. It's fine. But and then I drew a lot of inspiration from Commander, in that Commander is I mean, I'm not a big fan of playing Commander. Personal opinion. It's just not my favorite thing to do. But Commander is couched entirely in the concept of social play, right? The entire goal of a Commander game is not to win, unless you're playing CEDH. The goal of a game of Commander is to come together as friends and do interesting things with a random number generator, right? That is what Commander is. And so I think that this is just kind of a streamlined version of that, because you can play two to four players. I was going to ask, is your ego kind of like your commander? Yeah, basically. Yeah, he's like, this is like your identity card if you're playing Netrunner. This is your hero if you're playing Flesh and Blood. This is your commander if you're playing Commander, right? And so this game is not for spikes. Were you a big MTG guy? I was a pretty big MTG guy. Are you cheddar cheese because you're looking extra sharp today? Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I was pretty big into MTG. Like playing in, leagues on MTG online and going to my weekly local and competing on MTG Arena. And then I fell out of love with Magic and Wizards of the Coast in general and couldn't play that game anymore. So all of their cards are now things that I put Magic, or I put, proxies over. And yeah, now I play Flesh and Blood. What formats did you play? I played Modern. I played a little bit of Legacy, not really, because I didn't own any like Legacy cards. I mostly played with like my friends' Legacy decks. A little bit of Pioneer. Standard was how I got involved. Standard and Draft, or it's how I kind of started playing. And then, but Modern was my favorite. Was my favorite format. I'm doing a terrible job of cutting these on camera. And then I also play Commander still, because that's something that my friends do. I've been getting back into it exclusively for Draft. Draft is great. I actually think that Draft might be the only fun way to play Magic now. I think basically every other version of Magic is just awful. Like, unplayable. But I also play Flesh and Blood. So, like, I don't know. Flesh and Blood is one of those games that, like, if you like it, you can't like Magic anymore. It's so hard. Everyone calls me crazy for saying that. The Draft is the only fun way to play Magic. But they're crazy. Because Commander is fun if you have good friends. Anybody who says that Commander is fun regardless is crazy. Like, if you're playing with 4 random people or 3 random people, Commander is the worst. It is awful. But if you're, having a beer with your friends, or how we do it in Germany, drinking like a giant glass of wine and pinwheel slamming cards on the table and shouting, and, that is fun. But that's the only thing that's fun. The decks themselves are ass. Limited is so boring. You just pog. My mouse is in front of the word pog when you play a 2-mana 2/2. Yeah, whatever. They're wrong. People who don't like Draft just are not particularly strong at the fundamentals of Magic the Gathering, which is what Draft is it rewards the fundamentals of Magic the Gathering. Draft is the only fun way to play it because it's the only way that you're still playing Magic. Like, every other version of Magic isn't playing Magic anymore. You're doing some weird other thing where you're searching for a card in your deck that wins the game, and then you play that card, and that's it. That's the game. Whereas Draft, like, yeah, I guess you're kind of doing that, but at least it's variable, and there is a board state, right? Like, you have to do combat math. Oh my gosh. Who would have thought that there was a format in which you still had to do combat math? Or like blocker evaluation, threat density. Who would have thought that there was a format that still existed and it wasn't just like, oh, he played his 3-drop that wins the game. Either I kill it or I lose the game. Oh, there's my 3-drop that wins the game. I'll play my 3-drop that wins the game. Exactly. I feel like draft is the only game where I'm playing the game. Everything else is just the deck playing itself. You just put the cards on the table. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I like Flesh and Blood, because Flesh and Blood is like the opposite of that. Like there are so many decision points in that game that like it's almost too hard in some ways. Like there's a big discussion right now on the Flesh and Blood Twitter sphere that like the game is too low variance and there are too many decision points that like it is effectively impossible for a less skilled player to beat a higher skilled player, which is not the case in Magic. Like it's pretty likely that the higher skilled player, like if I'm playing against, you know, Piotr Kuklovsky or Paulo Vitor Damarosa, yeah, they're going to beat me. But, you know, if I'm playing against somebody who's slightly better than me in Magic, I can beat him. My brother beat me. And I was teaching him how to play the game, and he beat me. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, by the way. I don't think it's a bad thing that the less skilled player beats the high skilled player. But, like, it's very interesting to me because once I've played Flesh and Blood, I've tried to go back to play Magic, and I can't. Because the decisions are so much more interesting because you actually have to make them. It's not just, like, draw 3-drop on turn 3, play 3-drop, you know? I haven't heard of Flesh and Blood, but I'd like that. I come from fighting games where that's the norm. Flesh and Blood is basically a fighting game in card game form. Like, straight up. Like, I actually have a video on this, about this on my channel, about how Flesh and Blood is actually a fighting game that you play cards with. Because I also come from fighting games. Like, I play Strive, Street Fighter V, Unist. Like, I love fighting games. Those are some of my favorite games of all time. And Flesh and Blood feels like that, right down to like feeling like there's frame data. And I don't mean to like advertise Flesh and Blood on my stream, but like I think it's the best game that you can play, the best card game you can play. I don't think that there is a better card game. And I say that with my card game in front of me. Oh, what do you ever go to majors? No, but my friends do, but I don't. Mostly because like I'm just very nervous. I'm just a nervous person in general. Like when it comes to competition, talking, I'm not nervous ever. But like for some reason, I just don't trust myself. Also, I'm a little bit older now, and my reaction time is. I've never been good at fighting games, but I love fighting games. Let's see. That goes with Gavin. So this is Gavin. That's Gavin's alter ego. You play as Gavin, and then you ascend and become Galzu. Which is a naming convention in the book, by the way. I didn't come up with those names. All right, so these are the 2 heroes. Let's see. I've been traveling for tournaments for almost 10 years. Holy crap. That's wild. I would love to actually go to one. I just like... I'm so bad at them, man. And card games are really my speed. Like being able to sit and think for like 25 minutes about possible interactions and stuff. That's the jam. The finals of the biggest tournament the last 6 years out of 8, the dudes were 35. You're never too old. Fair enough. I mean, yeah. So Daigo is like, how old is he now? Like 42? And he's a ridiculously good player. But like, that's a lot of practice. That's a lot of practice. You know what I mean? But if ever one came up that was like in a convenient, because I live in like southern Germany, and if I ever saw one for a game I play, or could reasonably learn to play with like any amount of competency, I would totally go. I was supposed. Oh, I mean, I wonder which ones would even happen. DreamHack, maybe. I'm trying to think of events that are even held in Germany. What's the big gaming event in Germany? There's a huge one. I wonder if there's maybe a fighting game tournament there. Which games do you play, by the way? Which fighting games? Because I literally thought about playing Strive today. Fighting games aren't so much about reactions as it is about being ready to react to a situation. Yeah, totally. 100%. Yeah. Like, it's why you charge buffer. Or not charge buffer, but it's why you buffer, right? Like it rewards situational awareness rather than just reacting. Yeah. Which is why a lot of like the high level players of fighting games call things like rock, paper, scissors, right? Rock, paper, scissors is the literal easiest game ever. Like it cannot be an easier game, but also there's a lot of depth in the concept of it because rock, paper, scissors is choose one of three options. That's it. That's what that is. Rock, paper, scissors, right? But the depth of the game comes in the concept of predicting what your opponent is doing versus what you want to do, right? So that's why, because that's what fighting games are. It's balancing what you want to do versus predicting what your opponent wants to do, right? I know one of the top players in Europe is in like rural Germany, so maybe there's something. Top players of what? Street Fighter V? And I'm mainly a GG and Street Fighter player. Same. And I really dislike Strive, sadly. Oh, really? I love Strive. Strive is like my favorite one. Like I started playing with Exard Rev 2, and then I went back and played Accent Core Plus R. Love both those games. But I love Strive. Strive is like my favorite one. But I also like footsie-based games. I love how slow Strive is. I'll just put it that way. I also really love the combo system in the game. Like I'm glad that I don't have to hit so many buttons. Because like Gatlings are fine, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I would much rather have like slightly shorter options, right? Like I like the concept of like normal and directional normal leading into combos. That's something that I enjoy about Strive, but mostly the speed. I really enjoy the speed of Strive. Okay, so these can go together. Yeah, Street Fighter V is pretty much unplayable online. I loved a lot about it, but it became miserable to play competitively. You lose rounds off one hit. Yeah, that's true. The damage is very high, although I think they've reduced it recently. I don't know when the last time you played was, but they have brought it a little bit more in line with the damage of with previous Guilty Gear. Nothing like Exard. But I think I'm down to start playing Exard a lot more because Exard gets rollback in 3 days, 2 days. Exard is going to have rollback netcode this Friday. I remember being at Guilty Gear Strive Evo Top 8 and everyone was miserable watching. You could feel the game dying in the room. Oh man, why? Oh, I need to cut out more cards. I have sleeved all of my cards. Okay, so these two objects, every deck in the game gets 2 objects of power. So these two, Aanima's Tesseract, Aanima, and Alchemy will go with Aanima. And then there will be a second Alchemy somewhere in this document. Not sure where. And Gavin will get Alchemy and Gavin's sketchbook. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay. Nothing new to report in Twitch chat. So hopefully people who came to the YouTube and are watching this have gotten something out of how to do this. I think it's a relatively simple process in terms of, I got a little distracted with being a maniac about AI and various other things, but it's a relatively simple process. Like, it's just about assembling the materials, getting decent scissors, cutting them out, and putting them in sleeves over top cards. And like I said, if you go to the Mythion card game website, you can just you can follow the links there. They link to products that we think are probably a good idea to get, right? You can get like a 200 card deck for $8 and a pack of like 100 sleeves for $7 or something like that. You buy those two things in conjunction with downloading the PDF. You print the PDF however you want, and then you do exactly what I'm doing. And that's the process. That's the entire way to do this. And then once you get all of these done, I will put the deck lists on the website. I can't believe I forgot to do that. It like occurred to me just now. Not just now, but like 20 minutes ago. And then, yeah, so then everybody will know how to build the starter decks. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were recording this for YouTube. You're totally fine. No worries. I don't mind the candid nature. I actually think that that's something that should be embraced a little bit more. I don't mind the candid nature. I think that it's fine to get distracted, and if people want to... I kind of did this on Twitch because I wanted to show that there is a human behind the development of the card game. Because weirdly, I don't know why this is the case, but you very rarely see any of the developers of any card game. Like, I can't even think of any, except James White, who's the developer of Flesh and Blood. He's the only other one you see, and he's very just candid and open, and you know. So I think that, I mean, because that's the audience I want. I want the audience that's going to be okay with that, right? That there's going to be a little bit of all over the place, getting to know me, learning some stuff. You know, I don't need it to be very packaged and like, here are 5 top tips to cut out cards. Ben Brode. Oh yeah, Ben Brode. Yeah, he's all over the place. That's true. Yeah, Ben Brode, James White, and that's it. Raynad, if his game ever comes out. Raynad he was like a professional Hearthstone player, and then he went on to start his own card game called The Bazaar, I believe. And I've been waiting for it forever. I'd love to play it. I would love to try it. It actually kind of sounded not similar to what this is, but it sounded very... It was a card game that didn't have very clear victory conditions, right? It wasn't like kill your opponent. It was... there was a lot more to it. There was an update on the Bazaar not too long ago. Yeah. That game has been in development for so long. Because I stopped playing Hearthstone. I don't even remember what set. Man, when was that? I stopped playing Hearthstone a very long time ago. And I remember it was after Raynad had announced that he was going to make the Bazaar, was when I stopped playing Hearthstone. And that was a long time ago. Because I think Raynad announced the Bazaar like when Ben Brode was still at Hearthstone. I stopped playing Frozen Throne. I remember Death Knights in Arena, and I was done forever. Yeah, I don't know. I really despise that game. I despise Hearthstone. Which sucks because I still get very nostalgic for like the menu music, and like I still love so many things about that game. I just got a message on WhatsApp. Sorry, I gotta send a text message real quick. All right. Let's see. It's a good intro to card games for a lot of people, I think. It's simple enough to pick up and makes your brain get the card game tingle. Yeah, I think it's good in that regard. I just wish it was faster. I'm pretty sure that Marvel Snap is just going to supplant that. Like, There is one thing that kind of sucks about Snap in that there is no like multiple phase thing. Like there's not like a summon and then do, and then like you get to choose what it does. It just does what it does, and you put it wherever you think is best, right? Like on reel, whatever. I think there's a lot of interesting strategy to Marvel Snap. I do like the game, but like so many games are based on phases, and they just don't. Snap doesn't really have that, so it can't be like the best intro card game of all time, right? It's like, I think Marvel Snap is great as a mobile game, but not thinking about it as a card game. Yeah, I agree. I think if you are pretty entrenched in card games, you can think of it as a card game. But if you are not particularly familiar with card games, it doesn't really play like a card game. Because like we see, I mean, you and I who have played like 100 card games, probably, I mean, you and I can see like okay, there's some influences from this. I see what this is doing, because Snap actually feels a lot like Gwent. Um, like, yeah, it feels a lot like Gwent to me, where like you just play the card and then the card does the thing, and you win by points, right? Which is the exact same thing in Gwent. I played exclusively at the gym, and it's great that I couldn't imagine playing it unless I was captive with my phone, which would be either gym or commute. Yeah. Yeah, it is a great mobile game in that regard. Yeah, I just the way that I've looked at Marvel Snap is it's like it's a very easy game to make content for. Like an astoundingly easy game to make content for, because they're very easy to make fun of. First of all, like that's one of the big things. It's like boy is that game easy to make fun of. And two, it's just very easy to play in terms of like it's easy to chat and play the game. So it's a great stream game. And it's a monster IP, so very simple to do from your phone, no complicated UI or card text. Yeah, right, exactly. Like it's very grokkable, very, very simple. Simple on the eyes, simple on the brain. But there is some, interesting strategy in depth. But like, if I'm playing Flesh and Blood, my entire attention is arrested, right? Like I'm not, like I can't do anything other than that. Whereas with Snap, it's like, yeah, I'll look around, read chat, make fun of the game again. Open a box and get nothing out of it for the 50th time. It's very funny watching people play and they got like deck trackers and they're talking about complex strategy. Yeah. The game, it has to be probably the highest variance card game in existence, right? Like, what is higher variance than Marvel Snap? Because you have one of each card, you draw one per turn, you have an opening hand of 3, and you have three locations. Is like, yeah, and they're random, and there's a huge pool of them, and there's tons of random effects, and like how can you even affect the outcome of a win? The reason why the genius of Marvel Snap is that games take 5 minutes or less. Like that's the ultimate genius of Marvel Snap, is that it is a snap. Like it takes no time at all to jam 25 games, right? Versus like a game, if you're gonna play Magic, especially stream Magic, and you're gonna do like competitive Magic, so you're doing best of 3 sideboard, you're playing 10 games a day. Marvel Snap, if you're streaming that, you're playing 75 games. It's got such a huge one more factor. Yeah, because it is so short. Like when you get to the end of a best of three, like you're playing, let's say you're playing Rakdos mid range, and you're playing against blue or like Azorius control in Magic the Gathering. It's like, ugh, kill me. Like get me out of here. I've been here for 45 minutes. Get me out of here. Marvel Snap. Don't worry about it. You can play 50,000 games of that and. Let's get these Netrunner and then Netrunner. Anybody who hasn't played Netrunner, go play Netrunner. That's like that card game is astounding. Let's see. And since the games are so fast, you feel way less shitty when you lose a game from some kooky ass RNG. Yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah, the Snap is like one of the least tilting card games I've ever played. Specifically because it's 2 minutes. It's a 2-minute game. It's actually one of the that's one of the things about fighting games too. Like Jam talks about this a lot with fighting games, that the benefit, the advantage that fighting games have over other genres is that they their games are so fast, so you can play so many. And Snap was like, what if we did that, but we increased the speed? You know. See, Dyads of Praise, one goes into Gavin and one goes into AI Nima. I might actually end up making another video where I just show the deck list together. Like, I just like put the two decks side by side and go, this is what's in this. Just do like deck text. Let's see. Need another one of these. But it's so funny. I'm listening to like a random, I don't know, Twitch friendly playlist, and I'm hearing so much music from other streams, like in YouTube, so many songs. So they all did this. They all Googled Twitch music, or YouTube searched Twitch music and clicked on the very first file, which is what I did. See, that goes into Gavin, that goes into Gavin. These two cards go into Gavin. I do need to stop streaming relatively soon. Oh, I keep doing this. I keep cutting it out at, like off camera. Scissors ASMR stream. And yeah. So this is what I'm up to. Just de-sleeving old Netrunner cards. Hang on. I actually think I need to get this card out of the sleeve. Yeah, I need to actually put that in a commander deck to play with my friends. Let's see, do I have another card? Yes, I do. This one can go in here. Yeah, that Whisper card is actually pretty decent. I've been looking for that card for a while. And while I'm not the giantest fan of Commander, if I'm going to play it, I'm going to play it right. Heather Sims goes in Gavin. Heather Sims is Gavin's sister in the novel, for example. I actually think the cards look pretty good. I was quite impressed. Your results are obviously going to vary based on your printer, like whoever your, you know, who knows? Maybe Staples doesn't have a good printer anymore. But DM, where I print, is like, I'm always impressed with their print quality. Like it even has like a gloss. And like a gloss that looks nice. Like it's not just, gloss as a result of a wet thing being on it. Like it actually looks like if we hold it up side by side with a real card, right? So there's a little bit of a glare. It's a sharper glare, but there's a little bit of a glare from the gloss, right? Versus something like this, right? So this I printed at home. Oh no, I didn't. I didn't print this one at home. Did I print this one at home? Yeah, this one I printed at home. So this one I printed at home on my home printer, and you can see that there's very little like gloss to it. It doesn't look very, it just looks like a piece of paper. And then you have this, one of mine, and you can see that there's like a little bit of texture to the gloss. And that's good, in my opinion, because it's reminiscent of a card. Because if you can print, and I'm pretty sure they just have like a really high quality inkjet printer at these print shops, and so if you have a PDF of the thing, you just plug it into the computer and tell it to print it, and then it puts ink on paper. And yes, it's not as good as a real card. It's serviceable for like a free product. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I think I'm just going to have to upload this entire stream as a video, because I actually really like, I'm happy that I have a relatively eloquent defense of AI art somewhere in regards to the game, because then I'd like to be able to link this video to anybody, because I fully expect it. Like I'm expecting more and more people to tell me that I did a bad thing by using AI art. Not that Nunez said that, but like, I expect people to tell me that I did something wrong, and I would like to be able to link this argument. So as people can see, this is a relatively time-consuming process. Now, there are many steps you can take to make it a lot faster. Like you can, for example, get a one of those guillotine cutters. Those like you set the sheet down and then you pull the lever and it cuts it in a huge straight line. That would be great. I don't have one, but that's something that would speed this process up immensely. But actually, weirdly, I ended up really liking this. This is another reason why I wanted to have this available for players, because the DIY aspect of it feels really nice. It's kind of therapeutic in a way to like cut it out. I put that card in backwards. I didn't cut that one out super great, but I'm starting to fall asleep. But yeah, with the AI arts, I think if you just be open to having a discussion with people, they'll open about it, hopefully. Yeah, that's kind of my plan. That's kind of my goal. Like, that's why I put the banner or the section on the website that says, why AI? Like, I don't want it hidden at all that these were made by Midjourney, that this was all AI generated art. There's no plan whatsoever to suggest that this was made by anything other than Midjourney. Because I want to have that conversation. I want to make sure that people are not getting duped, right? Because when you feel duped, that's when you get pissed. And I don't want people to be pissed. I want people to be curious and maybe want to have a discussion with me about it, but I don't want people to be mad. So just come out and say it. Hey, this is all Midjourney. Yep, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it being from Midjourney. Why? Well, you're going to have to ask me. We're going to have to discuss it a little bit. However, I don't think that there's that many people who are as reasonable as you, Nunez. Like, that conversation went way better than I expected it to. I could imagine some other people being not so agreeable, not so open to other concepts, right? Because you and I we had a very adult discussion where we both kind of disagreed and ended up agreeing on some things and came to a compromise. I'm also going to look up Fab. Is it online or paper? Only paper. I mean, you can play Talishar. So Talishar.net is like the unofficial way to play Flesh and Blood online. And you just like grab a deck list, put it in, and queue against random people or friends, doesn't matter. But the real way to play Flesh and Blood is to go to the LGS. Like Legend Story Studios, who make Flesh and Blood, are like hardline about in-person competitive events. Like that is they are hardline about it. They don't let any amount of online play. I'll see if anyone at my local magic shop plays on Friday. Yeah, hopefully they do. Because man, that game is brilliant. You can also go to Felt Table. So there's Talishar.net. That's to play online against random people. Felt Table, you can play against AI, and they're okay. They're not like great, but it's a good way to learn how like the game works. Because like the game is simple, but not really. The game is very complex. It's simple to understand what you're doing, but to win is like crazy. In that way, it feels like a fighting game. Because like, yeah, anybody can, launch Street Fighter, and it's like this goes right, this goes left, this goes up, this goes down, and these are punch and kick. So, hit those buttons. So anybody can understand how to play Street Fighter, but how to win at Street Fighter, good luck. Like, that's a lot like Fab. Why do you live in Germany? Well, you see, I met my partner at my master's degree in America, and she's German. And when we graduated from the university, she said, either come with me to Germany or we're done, because I'm going back to Germany. And I said, sure. Sorry, cat rolling on. Yeah, you're good. No worries. But that's basically it. Yeah, it'll do it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we love each other very much, and she's very supportive of my kind of like weird life of like doing crazy art projects for money. And I'm very supportive of her in that I am kind of a house husband, as it were. But yeah, so yeah, it was a pretty obvious choice. I mean, we kind of had to come back here. Oh, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. Thank you very much. It took a long time. It took a long, long time. Yeah, you said you should have seen me before I met her. It was a mess. To be fair, she was kind of a mess. Not as much of a mess as me. She had her shit way more together than I did, but now we are good. And she speaks like 99% fluent English. So she's very, 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 very good at English. And I'm like 30% German, 30% of German in terms of like speaking ability. Like when I came here, I had to go straight into language school. Like I was not allowed to do anything else. I had to go to language school immediately. So I spent 8 months. I spent 8 months in a language school I gotta take that card out of there. That's a pretty good card that I'm gonna need for Commander. Let's see. And we'll just move that sleeve to the side. But yeah. So it's like 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. in the language school. So, ich kann jetzt Deutsch sprechen. But I still don't even think it's good enough for getting a job. I don't think it's considered good enough to work for a German company. I think I need the next level because I'm considered like B1 right now, and I could go and get B2. And I don't think it would actually take too long to get B2 certified. But I'm working on this, and I'm getting paid to do this. So like I don't really want to go back to language school just yet until this project is done. Or at least in a place in which I can do maintenance on it and return to it and put new product in it. Yeah, look at this. I mean, I've done this a lot, but I love it. I love being able to go through my own cards. Gavin has some loneliness. He definitely has paranoia. He has anguish. I think he has all the anguish. He does not have identity crisis. He has ambition. Yes, he does. He does not have prejudice. That's not his jam. But I think he has 2 loneliness. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He needs 1 more. It's not jealousy. I want to say it's probably loneliness. But he can't have 3 loneliness. Huh. Maybe it is 3 loneliness. Damn, that looks so legit. Thanks. Appreciate it. God, it took forever. Good for you. I've never really created anything like that before. Yeah. I think you can do it. I think just about anybody can do it if they're willing to sacrifice certain things, right? Like, this game does not have the best art in the world, and that's fine. I'm okay with it not having the best art in the world because I didn't pay a professional artist to do it. I did as much as I could to make it look good, but all of it comes down in cultivating the concept of creativity and pushing ideas in ways that you don't think that you should push them. Like, if you think you shouldn't do it, that's probably something you should do as long as you're not committing crimes. You know what I mean? So, like, if you think, no, there is no way to make The Sims 4 into a card game, even though I love that idea, right? Just as an example. Like, I'm not saying I love that idea. I'm just saying, like, let's say you love the idea of creating a card game that is where you play as Sims characters and you're trying to balance them in their house, right? You go, no, that's not very fun, right? I can't do that. I can't, whatever. That's probably something you should do and start designing for. And then if it sucks, then you throw it away and then you go to the next one, right? And you just keep going and going and going and going and going. But I'm kind of like weirdly obsessive about stuff like that. Like, I think about it all day. It drives my lady absolutely bananas because, like, I'll be sitting there eating lunch and she's like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, well, I'm thinking about how to make a TTRPG in which you, you have to input coordinates or you play it with Battleship, right? You play a TTRPG, but you play it with Battleship. That's what I'm thinking about. And she's like, oh my God, enough. I'm like, I know, sorry. So I'm doing that constantly. But I think that, like, everybody's going to have their own way of going about being really creative and doing weird stuff. But doing weird stuff is the correct move. Because weird is the only way. Weird is innovative. That's their synonyms. Even just doing like a short story, right? Like ooh, I almost cut the cable of my camera with these scissors. The way you employ your creativity is all about doing weird things. So, like, in a short story, write a character who gets murdered while playing Pokemon Go. That's weird. And if it's weird, it probably means that other people haven't thought of it. And you'll find, at least I found, that the more I do it, the better I get at it. What is that? Whenever a permanent owned by another player is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you draw one card and you lose one life. That probably is a card that I need to save for something. I'm returning to these really old cards that I haven't seen in forever. Like I didn't even forgot they existed. But some people, and this is also a totally valid way to live life. Some people, that's a bomb right there, yeah, right? Well, I got the Warhammer decks because I'm I do like Warhammer a lot. I don't play it really, but I really like the universe. Talk about weird, right? Like Warhammer is the definition of running with creativity. Like, you think that your universe is big? Well, we're going to be 65 billion times bigger. And, you think your guns are strong? Well, then our guns explode the universe whenever you fire them, right? Like, Warhammer is just that kid that is always one-upping everyone, where it's like, oh, your dad can lift a car? Well, my dad can lift a mountain. That's Warhammer. So that's something I really like about Warhammer. Anyway, I bought those decks. The commander decks, and then I want to turn one of them into a demon deck because the demon commander is pretty cool, and I'm the only one that I play commander with that is trying to kill everyone. So I don't mind jamming in like giant Timmy cards. Let's see, I think some of these downloads are supposed to go with AI Nima. They are. Where is that other alchemy? It's got to be somewhere. How soon is this going to end? Oh, we're good. I just didn't want it to like go to the next one. The next like video, and it's like 10 things you need to know about whatever. But yeah, so back on the creativity thing. I think cultivating creativity is a skill, basically just like anything else. And it's totally fine not to work on that skill. That's a totally fine thing to do. I don't work on my math skills ever. Unless you count playing card games as working on my math skills. Like mental math skills, I don't have any, except doing very quick calculations of plus and minus health, right? That's it though. The point I'm trying to make here is that while it is totally fine to work on creativity as a skill, it's totally fine to not want to do that, and it's totally fine to never make a creative project in your life. If people are interested in that, if that's something that they want to do, then the only way that they can do it is to just make shit constantly. Like any idea that you think is kind of cool, you just like figure out how to do it. And the more you try and figure out how to do it, the more skills you learn. Like, because I was like, how do I make a card game? Started looking around. Oh, I could use this to make the art. And then I found out that everybody hates AI art. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to keep doing it anyway. How am I going to get the game available to people? Well, start looking around on the internet. Oh, Netrunner seems cool. How do they do it? Oh, they just make a PDF available for people to download, and then they can go and they can print the cards to demand? Cool. I like that idea. I'm going to do that idea too. And then you go and try and figure it out yourself, and it's a total nightmare. And then, I learned things about like bleeding edge. I never knew what that term was until I was making a card game. And Bleeding Edge, as it turns out, is a little space on the side of cards that you need to account for when printing because there's errors in printing. And none of my cards fit in the make playing cards Bleeding Edge, so all of the art was getting cut off. There was like basically a square that was like here. And it was like, just so you know, we're going to cut off like all of this. So I lost all of my color border. And I was like, shit. So I went and figured out how to make them smaller so that they actually print to those cards correctly. And you just learn stuff. And now I know about Bleeding Edge. So then when I want to go make the next set of cards, I can figure out, well, what if I did something weird with Bleeding Edge? What if like I put rules text on the Bleeding Edge? What if you did that? You know, what would happen? And then you try it and you go, that sucked. But I did get something really cool out of it, which is a cool card that I'm just going to make normal. Like you make a card called Edge Case Scenario where you put the rules text on the edge. Turns out it sucks on the edge because nobody can read it. So then you go, okay, but I do like the effect. Edge Case Scenario is whatever effect. Put 2 Worry Wart tokens on the battlefield, or in the theater, as we call it in this game. Put 2 Worry Wart tokens in the theater. Once per turn, I don't know, roll a d20. If you roll 10 or lower, discard a card. If you roll 10 or higher, keep your cards. And then the next turn, rolls again. I actually am liking this card design. Edge Case Scenario, because it represents the concept of like being worried about things that are unlikely. And so that you would use a dice to represent that, right? I'm all about ludo narrative. That's what I'm all about. I love story through play, and I think about it and I study it all the time. Let's see. We've got the objects. We've got these 2 download cards. I believe both decks have 2 versions. Oh no, both have 2 versions of Tranquility and 3 download. That's another thing I need to put in the rules. I forgot about that. Is that maximum number of cards in a deck is 3. But I will introduce a new deck building section when I get to it, because there is no deck building in the game currently. I'm a huge fan of when games are aware of the way the player interacts with them. Me too. That's why I loved like Inscription. Did you ever play Inscription? I loved Inscription. Because Inscription was very aware of the player. It wasn't just like, again, it wasn't lazy. It wasn't a lazy piece of art. Spec Ops: The Line, Deadly Premonition. Yeah, totally. Spec Ops: The Line, excellent. Especially the way that it morally implicates the player. No, but so many people have told me to play it. Inscription is awesome. It's such a good game. It's so smart, so interesting. Fun story, but what it really is just very surprising. And that's all I can say. Because if there's any possibility that you might play the game, I can't say anything else. Because the whole idea behind the concept of the game is surprising. Is that a card I need? Yeah. We're going to go ahead and take that out of the sleeve. I can definitely figure out how to use that card in a way. I forgot about that card. Maybe you are maybe the 5th person that told me to play Inscription. If you like card games, if you really like card games, it, in my opinion, is a must play. Because it does things with card games that, yeah, please don't. I'll try to get around to playing it. It does things with the concept of a card game that have never been done before in ways that are just great. Let's see. AI Nima has 2 download. Gavin has... The other thing I wanted to do with this game, this is something I wanted to really make note of. Gavin has 3 download. So that means AI Nima needs 3 download. I wanted these cards to be as simple as I could possibly make them. You're sold? Excellent. Great. It'll be on sale again soon. It was not too long ago on sale. Anyway, the thing that I found really cool, or one of the things I find very interesting, is you see a lot of like indie card games, that their cards are so busy. They're so busy. Like, they're just full of like lines and symbols and text, and there's shit going down the right side, and there's the main text box, and there's some text on the picture for some reason, and there's symbols everywhere. And I was like, ugh, that is not grokkable. So one of the core design principles that I had in making the game was I want these cards to be incredibly easy to read. Like, deprogram one negative ideation. Done. That's all it says. When this card is drawn, place it immediately into the theater, which is like the battlefield. At the beginning of each player's turn, each player may choose one, gain one resource, intuit one. And then you can look up what intuit means in like the rules. So yeah, it's just kind of cool. And like these are the negative ideations, the cards you're meant to deprogram is the term we use for it. But your opponent may not help you clear this negative ideation. That's all it says. Nothing else. Because the thing is card games are not fun because they're complex. Card games are fun because they have a compounding effect of complexity. Because every piece is a ludic piece, right? Like, there's not a compounding effect of complexity of a character running in a game. There's a compounding complexity effect of levels reusing assets and reusing and recycling content and recycling ideas like platform puzzles and stuff like that. But the concept of running doesn't get exponentially more complex like a card game does. Every card that is played in a card game ramps the complexity. So like, you play a 1-drop in Magic, your opponent plays a 2-drop, you play a 3-drop, your opponent plays a 4-drop, you play a 3-cost spell, your opponent plays a Planeswalker. Now there's so many things that are taking place simultaneously that the fun is born out of the concept of tracking all of it, right? And the individual cards themselves are not that complex. I mean, in the case of Magic, they kind of are now, but like, at a point in time, it was like, this creature has reach, this creature has flying. This Planeswalker has, at the beginning of your turn, your opponent loses 1 life. And that creates a very interesting dynamic. That creates a very interesting concept for a game in which one player has a way to block a flyer, but can't attack. One player has a flyer, but can't attack. And one player is losing life, right? So there's this compounding complexity of, okay, what do you do? If you're the player who's losing, what do you do? If you're the player who's winning, what do you do? Right? And that's what's fun about card games. What's not fun about card games is struggling to read cards. That's not fun about card games. So when you're going, what does this do? When? That's not fun. So the design principle that I had was just, the card should be as easy to read as physically possible, where you read it one time and you know what it does. And I just simply rely on the idea that the complexity will arise from playing many, many cards in a turn, and hopefully you're playing them in the correct sequence. The hell is this? Whenever Izareth the Awakener attacks, you may pay X. When you do, return target creature with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it. If that creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. Yeah, sure. I'm out. I'm out of cards. I'm out of paper. I still have more sheets, but I'm out of cards. And it just occurred to me that Paranoia is the card that was supposed to go into the Gavin deck, not another copy of Loneliness. So that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, exactly. We are exactsies, because Gavin is paranoid and AI Nima is lonely and jealous. And is having an identity crisis because she's an AI. Oh, my back's starting to hurt. Yeah, I think those who came here to see how to do it have probably seen how to do it. So I might call it a stream here so that I can go and do some other stuff that I need to do today. But I really wanted to make this video and get it uploading because the game is now available on our website and on Make Playing Cards. And I don't want to... I want there to be as much information for new players as possible because the game is pretty complex by accident. I kind of went down a rabbit hole of design, and it was a very fun rabbit hole. Yeah, I need to make another cup of coffee. I got to take care of the dog. Got to write some stuff, some proposal things. Got to, got to hustle. But I'm glad I got to make a kind of a marketing video on sleeving your starter deck in the game of Mythion, the card game. So sympathy goes into AI Nima. You can see, like, once you're going, once you're moving, you're moving. It doesn't take very long to cut individual cards out because you just cut one card out with enough white space around it. Are you going to do any marketing for it? I mean, we kind of are. Like, that's what this stream is for. That's what Twitter is for. And the idea that my dad and I have about this is he's putting a decent chunk of budget into marketing the novel because he wants to sell the novel, right? He's self-publishing the novel. So this idea was something I came up with long ago, which is that if you want to make it in story, the only thing you can't do is only write. That's the only thing you can't do. If you only write, you will never, ever sell your book, ever. So what you need to do then is come up with as many different ways, as many things as you can think of to convince people to give your book a try. Because the only thing that people don't buy is books. Like, somebody will buy a video game with like decent reviews for $40, but somebody will not buy your book for $3. They will not do it. If they don't know who you are, they will not buy your book. So the only way that you can do derive any amount of success from being a published writer is to sell yourself first. And the way you sell yourself is by doing a lot of things. You make YouTube, you make Twitch, you get part of a community, you ingratiate yourself. And it's not that I'm doing all this disingenuously, right? Like, it's not like I'm streaming up Marvel Snap, so I'm like, haha, I tricked them, now they have to buy my card game. That's not like what I mean. What I like that stuff, and I want to be seen in that space, and also I'm a writer, or also I'm a game designer. Also, I'm selling this. If you want to grab it, you can, and that's kind of the way that I'm thinking of it. Is like, we make a card game. People who see the card game go, oh, it's based on a novel, and then they click on the novel. What is the novel about? Oh, it has pretty good reviews on Amazon. Sure, I'll grab it. Oh, what is this random YouTube video about cutting cards out of sheets? Oh, what is the game he's making? Oh, it's called Mythion. Go to the website. Oh, there's a novel? Or somebody finds a novel and they're like, I'll read anything because I'm a weird person who just goes to Amazon and buys books for no reason at all, Oh, that's really cool. I like that book. Oh, there's a card game? My kid plays card games. So the idea is to do, like, I guess for lack of a better term, shotgun guerrilla marketing, where your very existence is marketing, which is what the world is now, unfortunately, is your existence is marketing. The fact that you are alive, you're marketing. And that sounds a little dystopian, but I think it's time to admit we kind of live in a dystopia. I mean, it's hard not to think that we live in some form of dystopia when there are people who literally film their lives for 24 hours a day. And and that's how they feel they make money. I mean, what an interesting hobby that can turn into a job. Streaming is very strange. Because I really like streaming. Streaming's fun, but I also like talking. Like I can just talk and talk and talk, and I don't even care if anybody's here or not. I can just talk. Because all I do, I just pretend that there's 1,000 people in the stream, and I just talk like I'm talking to 1,000 people. There's probably one, but for some reason I don't know why it just doesn't bother me. I can just talk and talk. Which is also really strange because when I'm not on stream, I actually don't talk a whole lot. I'm not like walking around the house going like talk. You know, I'm not doing that. And I don't really consider myself to be like a super weird person. Like a super weird one. A little bit weird, but like not like super weird. And now I'm rambling. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, to be honest. Okay. I think this is going to be the last sheet, and then we're calling it. Search for meaning. One search for meaning goes in both decks. And I should say, too, I think that this is a relatively valuable thing to say about this card game. I never really expect or even designed for the concept that this game would ever be played anywhere other than the kitchen table. I just don't have the distribution chops. Like, I don't know. You know, I'm not an industry guy. Like, I'm a designer and a writer, and that's what I am. Like, that's what I'm good at. Props to James White for figuring out all that stuff when he was making Flesh and Blood, and I'm glad that he's reaping the benefit of what he sows, but like, that is not me. I'm not going to be able to figure that out. So, like, I don't ever expect this game to be huge, but I also don't think that it needs to be. And in some ways, I don't want it to be. Like, I kind of want to be that game, like, everybody's got that game that, like, you know, you played it in your childhood and it was like this dusty game that your parents owned or your cousin had or whatever. And you're like, you meet a friend 10 years later and you're like, did you ever play Crazy Wall? And your friend is like, what the hell are you talking about, Crazy Wall? And you're like, it was like a card game. You built walls and they were crazy. And your friend's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That's kind of what I want to be. Because also, the market is pretty flooded with card games right now, which is another reason why I think this game needs to be very different, right? This is a very different card gaming experience from what I think people are used to. Because in this card game, you don't really compete. The whole idea is the social aspect, and you and your opponent working together to solve each other's flaws, right? In a narrative story sense. But the game is hard. It's not an easy game to play in terms of, like, there's a lot of ways to lose and a lot of ways to tie. So I think there's kind of multiple ways that you can go about trying to play the game, which I think is where the fun gets derived from. God, I keep doing that off camera. I'm so sorry. There's a little bit of white on that bottom edge there. There we go. And so, yeah, that's That's what's fun, is sort of getting together with a friend or friends and going through, I can spill the beans here a little bit. So basically the original concept for the game was I want to tell the hero's journey in card game form. There's only 2 cheers in each deck. And how I went about doing that was I mapped the hero's journey and I tried to figure out how I could match it in a card game. Where did that other Heather go? Heather Sims. And because the hero's journey is something that every writer needs to know to write. If you don't know the hero's journey, you need to just go learn it. Like there's no, sorry, you just have to know it. Like it's not like super cool and avant-garde to not know it. Like you just have to know it. So I wanted to map the hero's journey, and this was the best way that I could figure out how to do it. Was the hero's journey is always about the concept of a character wanting something for their ego and realizing that the thing that they wanted was to kill their ego and how to kill it. Right? So Gavin, for example, if I can find his hero card. Aha. Gavin is ego manifests the perfect design. And what that means is he has to search through his deck and he needs to find 5 different cards that are a part of a clothing design that he's trying to do, which is something he's trying to do in his novel. And then he's filled with, heroes are flawed. All heroes are flawed. They're designed to be flawed. They have to be flawed. Otherwise they're not relatable. Or you have Superman and that sucks. So Gavin is flawed, and the flaws are represented in these cards, right? Gavin is paranoid. He's lonely. He's ambitious, too ambitious, to the point where he might step on other people. He has deep-seated anguish, which is his real problem. That's the result of all these. And so these are the representation of his flaw, these cards. So he has a fatal flaw. And in a hero's journey, a hero overcomes their fatal flaw to become a new version of themselves, in which they realize their new goal, which is to deprogram fear from the World Tree deck. So while Gavin thought that he was supposed to make the perfect design, because he's an artist, he designs clothing for a living, and he's a fashion man, what he realizes is that he actually should be trying to heal the world and help the world rid itself of fear to change, right? That's what Gavin's real thing is. And that's how Gavin becomes a hero. And that is the hero's journey. It's that over and 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 over again since the time of the Greeks. That's how all stories have functioned. Even when they are trying not to, that's how stories have functioned. So, yeah. That was the ultimate goal. And so when you're playing the card game, you're effectively telling yourself a story about Gavin's life over and over and over again, in which he sometimes fails his hero's journey, sometimes he succeeds his hero's journey. And what does it look like when he fails and when he succeeds? And then when I introduce deck building, I'm just going to figure out how to do that. Because there's got to be some way to do it. I think it might be going on journeys. But I think it's a pretty good conceit for a card game, is the concept of going on the hero's journey. And that, my friends, is the last card of the day. Tranquility, number 4 or 5. Let's see, how many does Nima have? Nima has 1, 2, 3 download. That makes sense. 2 tranquility. 1, 2, 3. Gavin has how many tranquility? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm confused. Without the document in front of me. Without the document in front of me, the deck building document, I can't remember who has the number of cards. So if Gavin has 3, okay, that means Nima needs 3. Okay, so she's got 3 now. I thought they had 2. Maybe in the starter deck they do have 3. That's possible. Because the starter decks do vary slightly from the print version, from the full version of the decks. Anyway, so I hope this is informative. Sorry, I kind of got off the rails, but it is a stream, and that's what streams are. Is, you know, getting a candid look at the person who you might be purchasing from, and this is me. I'm a gamer at heart, and I like you will try and figure out how to make any game cheaper, and so I'd fault you in no regard if you want to try the game for free first. This is how you do it, and they don't look bad. They don't look bad. And I hope that if you play the game and you enjoy it and you want 2 more decks so that you can play with either 4 people or just more options, you can go to Make Playing Cards and you can buy it there. I'm still figuring out how to get it on drive-through cards. We're also trying to figure out how to get our own distribution, but it's going to take some time. So, you know, this is not the Magic killer. This is not Pokemon killer. There's no collectability. This is not the Netrunner killer. This is another game that you can own and you can play like any other, right? Comes in a box set, you get everything. When I put out new stuff, I'll tell you exactly what's in it. You can buy it if you want. You don't have to. When I put out new heroes, new identities, you can buy them if you want. You don't have to. The starter decks are fun, and you can play them, and when you're done, you can get rid of them. But if you want to keep playing, then, you know, you have that option too. So that's just kind of how I've looked at this the whole time. This is my artistic project, and I think it is good, and I hope people want to experience it too. And yeah, so that's basically everything about me. This has kind of turned out into a weirdly confessional stream. But I hope if you do end up trying to decide, or if you do end up trying it, you should reach out to me on Twitter at Cathartigan, or reach out to me on the Mythion card game Twitter, which is just at Mythion card game. And yeah, link to all of that stuff will be below this video. So I hope you have a good day, and I'm going to go take care of the things I need to around the house and then finish cutting these out, and then I'm going to try and goldfish the decks against each other off stream. I'm not going to do that on stream. There is a video to explain how to do that on the YouTube channel, how to play the game. And there's also rules on the website, and also the rules come with the document or the PDF when you download it. All right, cool. Well, thank you all. For anybody who came and watched the live stream, thank you for watching on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.